All right, so the recording is officially going, and this is Food, Sleep, Sex, what Ayurveda has to say about your physical, mental, and spiritual health. I think on one of my posts I said emotional instead of mental, and essentially it's all there. It's implied. Your full spectrum of well-being are said to be visible through and addressed through how we use our food, sleeping, and sex. And what I find to be really true in my own experience and my understanding of the teachings is that these are aspects of self that are fundamental to our survival and also things that we can use to evolve. Each expresses relationship of some kind to the world around us and the world within us. And before we get into too much content, I just want to introduce myself for those who will listen to this recording who may not know me. My name is Stacy Ramsauer, and I am a yoga teacher, a somatic sex educator, a doula, trained in Ayurveda, a mom. I love to write, I love to dance, and a teacher. I feel really like the thing that I feel most connected to as a vocation or my offering in the world is teaching. It's where I feel most like a conduit, like I don't have to work so hard. And so I'm really grateful for that. One of my teachers in an interview, she said something like, she was asked a question on a podcast, and she said, I'm able to channel information when I'm teaching in a way that I can't in just ordinary conversation. And I very much feel that. Like it's not that like some mystical force is providing me information, or maybe that's what I mean, but it's like there's an opening that happens when I teach where there's information that's able to come through from like my cells. And I think all of us have this capacity, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today. But I want to offer that there is going to be a lot of information coming through in this hour that is not, well, most of it is not linear. My intention is that this is not an A to B bullet point list kind of experience, because that's not how I operate, and that's also not how life happens. So I don't think, and maybe this is like the overarching goal of this class and my future offering called Mapping the Sacred Body, life, your body, your being, your wellness is not point A to point B. It's much more cyclical than that. It's much more of a loop and a spiral and a beautiful mystery. And so if your food protocols, your wellness protocols, your self-care, so to speak, is very much like bullet point black and white, it's probably why it's not working. And I am a great teacher with lots of information, but I feel like the most helpful thing I can offer is a container in which you can hear and feel the points of resonance in your being for what needs more of your life force, aka attention. And let go right now of like, I'm going to write down the top 3 things that can fix my acne or help me lose 10 pounds or get 8 hours of sleep every night. I don't know what you need to do to make those things happen, because I don't know your deep history. And if you want to work with me down the line, maybe I'll get to know a bit more. But today, the most essential piece is this listening, deep listening to self and the wisdom that resides in your body. So for now, for the next 5 minutes or so, I invite you to get more present to how you're actually physically situated in relationship to the earth. And if even for the next 5 minutes you just want to lay flat on your back or you want to make a big change in your posture, do that. If it's a minor adjustment that you can make to help you feel a little more connected to gravity, then please do that. One of the easiest ways is to put both of your feet on the ground and to balance as much as you can the weight right to left in whatever's bearing your weight. So maybe that's your butt cheeks, maybe it's the back of your body, maybe your side. But see if you can get just a little bit more connected to gravity and allow for these next few breaths to be simple, not forceful, not formulaic. Notice where there is the experience of ease in releasing. And what's more likely is there will be a kind of pulse of release, resist, release, resist. And you have to kind of participate in the releasing. Track your inhale as a down and in movement. And without forcing your inhale to be really deep or expansive, just notice where it goes, where you have access to movement. And let the exhale be almost an up and out movement, and not like you sit up taller and pull away from the earth up and out, but like a release of the tension in your body, like a fountain just coming out of your head and away from your body. And you will pendulate your attention, your focus, your effort between body, that kind of pulse of release, and then maybe an unconscious resisting to the release. And then the breath down and in. Excuse the phone ringing. And then imagine just for the next few breath cycles that the ground that holds you up is there unconditionally. Just with the prompt of that word, imagining unconditional support for yourself. Notice how the body shifts. Thoughts that arise, emotions that bubble up. Allow for the unconditional support of the ground underneath you to take primary focus. While allowing yourself to acknowledge where there may be resistance to that or feelings about that. And notice if there's a shape change that wants to happen in order to access more of this unconditional support. Might be a subtle change or a big change in your posture to get closer to that reality. 6,000 miles of earth on the material level. Thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of years of lived experience supporting you in your physical form. And then the ultimate source of support, of course, this causal body, the desire of consciousness to know itself through you, through your lived experience. Maybe there's an impulse to place a hand somewhere on your body or hold yourself, make a sound, a little movement in order to acknowledge all of this support, waves of support holding you today and every day. With a big breath, make a little sound. And you're welcome to stay as you are. You can keep your eyes closed or open them. Shift to the next place where you can be present to this support and also this shared space, the group space, which may or may not include opening your eyes. Thank you for that, for your attention. There's a quote from Tara Brach, who's an amazing Buddhist meditation teacher. Most of you probably know her, that I heard on her podcast recently. She said, the intensity of our compulsive thinking is in direct proportion to the extent that we are not willing to be in our bodies in that moment. And wow. And the thesis statement of this lecture was, we're all dissociated at least some of the time because of the nature of our society. And there's some other reasons why also that we're going to talk about today. But what I want to connect to with that quote is this understanding and awareness that we are constantly taking in information and recapitulating experiences also of belief that somehow there is something inherently wrong with us, rather than the assertion of the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda and most indigenous cultures, which is that we exist on purpose in this form as we are, in the time that we exist, with the community, whether chosen or not. There is a function to that. And function is not the sexiest word, but it's useful in that, this is the raw material of our life. The family that we were born into, the challenges that we were born into, the burdens that we carry on our back from our ancestors, and the opportunities we've been given. We are here to a certain extent in choice. Now here's where it can get a little bit tricky, like who chooses to be born into a civil war or, that kind of thing. It's not a conscious choice. No one chooses to suffer consciously. But if we are coming from this foundational point of Ayurveda and tantric wisdom and feminine wisdom, which says that there is an intrinsic intelligence to life, then every aspect of our being is an imprint or a condition that will allow us to know our full potential and therefore act upon that potential or act with that potential. So whatever you have had to do up to this point in order to achieve any amount of stability or joy or freedom or pleasure in your life, that kind of grinding process, because it almost always feels like that, Sisyphean task of finding some freedom in our life, that is part of your refinement process. And to get way ahead of ourselves, finally when we die, our soul enters back into this magnificent pool of consciousness and wisdom with those lessons, with that refinement, just that probably small, tiny bit of added clarity to the pool. Now, where do food, sleep, and sex come in? Well, like I said, these are fundamental to our survival. You have to eat, you have to sleep, and if we're speaking from a purely technical perspective, sex is the continuation of our species. Sex makes babies, in case you didn't know that. We've kind of forgotten that in our culture. And we're really obsessed with, all the fun ways that we can use sex, which I think is awesome. But also, I'm really obsessed with kind of like the basic fundamental principles. This is the means by which we perpetuate our species. And even if we're not procreating with every time we have intercourse, there is this quality of creation that happens. The creation of another level of consciousness, the creation of a new energy between you and whoever you're having sex with. And little, footnote here to that comment. I don't care who you're having sex with. I don't care when or where or how often or, what the conditions are, but that we are aware that every time we do, we are creating something. And that something can serve as a kind of momentum for our spiritual wellness, because ultimately sex is this expression of that which is infinite, that which is not just momentary. When we are engaging in sex for just that momentary kind of like satisfaction, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's, as I'm sure you've all experienced, it's kind of like, well, that was anticlimactic. Like, yeah, that felt good, but now that's over and I don't really know what to say. Talk to you later. Am I right? Okay, moving on. The experience of food, to come back to the beginning, is really at its most foundational, our experience of being of this earth. In other words, being incarnate, being flesh, being body. Our first source of food is the womb, that first holding environment. An Ayurvedic practitioner would say to a couple or a person wishing to conceive, you start that process as early as possible, at least 6 months, but maybe a couple of years before you conceive, getting your body right, getting your tissues healthy. That's not really, I think it's almost increasingly becoming the case, as women are having babies later, right? There's a lot of IVF and IUI fertility support happening, and food is not as much a part of that protocol in the medical system as it should be, but there is a sense of like preparing that in more historic times would have started with your physical well-being, your emotional well-being, and of course your spiritual well-being, because you are in some way paving the way for this new expression of soul to come into its body. There's a really wonderful educator named Ray Castellino. He's the teacher of one of my teachers, Mia Califf, who wrote The Secret Life of Babies. Ray Castellino is a pioneer in the pre- and perinatal psychology movement, understanding that consciousness begins at conception, which is also an Ayurvedic belief. Consciousness begins at conception, and the tone, the mood, the experience, the plans, those imprints are in place before the soul even comes into form. I say this a lot, and I think it's fascinating, and I want to say it here. The Ayurvedic tantric understanding of karma, that which we will have to work out while we are in a body, and notice these parallels, this turns me on. Incarnation, karma, these roots of words, the action of coming into flesh, we're informed largely by things that were totally out of our control, the choices and trajectory of our maternal and paternal lineages. So the experiences and digestive experiences, digested, this is really crucial. the experiences that our ancestors were capable of digesting and assimilating, those are likely the smoother imprints. And then kind of these rough and tumble, sometimes burdensome experiences that we carry forth are a lot of the undigested or unaddressed experiences. So 25% of your kind of beingness is from your maternal lineage, 25% from your paternal lineage, 25% is yours specifically as this sweet, intelligent soul that you are, and 25% of your karma is determined by your experience in the womb. As a mom, I'm really clear that this conversation is not about like blaming your mom. It's not about fault. It's about reality. What support was available to her? What support was she able to receive? What food was available? What was the environmental quality, right? Both, I think of like the environment of the culture and the physical environment. Did she have to work? Was she able to rest? What was her mental experience of pregnancy? This is all shaping us. And so we come into form with a kind of impression. I think of like a big stamp, right? A shape. And I mean that literally, the shape that we took in the womb in response to the hormones coming to us, the emotional tone. Embryos, fetuses are responding from the moment of conception. And there's an amazing somatic educator who's passed away. His name is Stanley Kellerman. My favorite book of his is called The Human Ground. And Stanley Kellerman introduced this idea of gesture creating our posture, and our posture creates our structure. So this first gesture maybe of trying to be small and not inconvenient in our mother's womb, or the experience of being just like, gotta get out of here, wild, tearing through. This first gesture for like how we're gonna reach out for life determines our first posture. And that posture, a repetition of a pattern, determines our structure. Our structure largely determines our nervous system behavior. And our nervous system largely determines whether or not we're able to sleep. In Ayurveda, we call it our dosha. It's actually it's really like our nervous system behavior. And there's so many things that I want to say. So if I start talking too fast, just give me a little signal or type into the chat like, whoa, go back. What did you just say? If you're not live, you can email me and ask, or you can actually rewind and listen to what I said again. So this nervous system behavior, there are many expressions, but primarily we have a more kind of sympathetic behavior, which is that fight or flight, right? Activation, hypervigilance, watching everything that's going on. These people make lots of lists. They're constantly doing, figuring out strategy. And then there's parasympathetic inclination, which is a little more like, oh, I don't know, you tell me what to do. I just want to go home and watch TV. No, I can't even deal with that. These are kind of like the extreme examples. And there's lots of variation in between. There's lots of overlap, frankly, depending on our triggers. So I'm doing kind of a broad sweep of food, sleep, sex, if you're not getting that already. If there are any questions that are coming up, write them down, send them to me, or type them in the chat. The way that we engage with our surroundings, which includes people, has a lot to do with these earliest impressions, which are kind of the inherited beliefs that are embodied by the people that made us, that created us, that gave us flesh, as well as our experience of being in a body in those earliest days? So was there a lot of chaos? Was there a lot of calm? Was it steady and reliable? Was it a little bit frantic? Did you have to fight for a place at the table, so to speak? Let me see what's happening in the chat here before I go too far. So the father, that's a really good question. The question is, what role does the father play on our impression when in the womb? Is he there? Was he around? What kind of energy is the mother or the pregnant person internalizing from father's presence? So it's a pretty significant role, actually. As a side note, as an aside, and you guys may have to help me get back on track, one of my teachers, Kimberly Johnson, recently interviewed this amazing birth educator named Michel Audin. He's 89 years old. He's very French. He's wonderful. And he was a pioneer for gentle birth, water birth, and has been a lifelong educator about the fact that pregnancy and birth are fundamentally important to our well-being as a society, to our humanity, really, how we treat pregnant people and babies. It matters. And obviously that's really personal and special to me, so that's why I always include that in these lectures. She interviewed him, and there's a video version of the podcast with subtitles because his accent is very thick. I recommend it. I was like, oh no, I'll be fine, and I couldn't understand it within 5 minutes. So he started talking about his contemplations of the fact that so many people are being conceived without oxytocin, meaning there's a lot of IVF happening, and I think it's an amazing achievement of medical technology, and it allows for the beauty and blessing of birth to happen. And what does that mean when oxytocin, naturally produced oxytocin, isn't part of the process of insemination or conception? And then, you know, even if it's quote unquote a natural birth, or a natural pregnancy, I don't really like that term, but when we are at the point of giving birth, synthetic oxytocin, aka Pitocin, being used in obscene amounts to precipitate the process. What does it mean for mother and baby when oxytocin, the love hormone, is not part of the process? Because what Pitocin does is it blocks our body's oxytocin receptors. So there's essentially a shutting down of the natural process of real animalistic, like that animalness of my baby, which is a real thing. Let me tell you, as someone who birthed with nothing to numb the pain, it's a very powerful chemical. Your body knows how to birth. It knows how to make love. It knows how to digest. It knows how to die. And we're at a time in history where the medical system has decreed that actually you don't know. I know, and I'm going to help you do this. And forget it, goes way beyond the medical system. Look at how many diet schools there are out there, right? This is what you should be eating. This is what it should look like. This is how you should feel. This is what you need to do every day in order to be a good person and a worthwhile member of the society. So this is what we're here to tear off of ourselves, off of our physical bodies, off of our psyches. There is nothing that you are supposed to be doing to be worthy of this life other than living your life from a place of deep love and self-respect. And so the prompt, the offering, the question is, how much of your behavior, right, this reaching for your food, your partners, your job, is coming from this kind of traumatized initial gesture of maybe not feeling safe or being told you don't belong or what you want isn't good enough, and how that has created a physical structure that is now obstructing your ability to feed yourself in a way that actually feels good. to move your body in a way that is satisfying, and to just rest with little to no effort at all. And looking at you, the face that I can see, Margaret, isn't it amazing that we're at this point in time where like you have to teach people how to rest? Margaret is an amazing teacher of restorative yoga, among other things, and a student on this path of coming back into right relationship with being. You have a right to be here. Step one, believe that. Create the conditions within yourself where you actually believe that. And we're going to do a little practice for that together. And if it's possible for you to stand, I would encourage you to stand. If it's better for you to lay down for whatever reason, lay down. If you're driving as you listen to this, maybe pause and come back when you can actually be in your body in this way. And find just your posture, right? Stand in a way that feels familiar without kind of getting into your Iyengar mountain pose. Just stand, please. And your eyes may be open. If they are, I encourage you to see the surrounding walls or whatever landmarks can kind of act as a wall. And then bring your awareness more to the proprioceptive capacity of your body to sense where you are in time and space. Maybe you close your eyes if that feels safe or interesting. And can you sense the relative distance between the front of your body and the wall or landmark facing the front of your body? And now shift your awareness to the back of your body and see if you can sense the relative distance between the back of your body, base of skull, sacrum, calves, and the nearest landmark or wall facing the back of your body. Now noticing that same thing on the right hemisphere of your body, starting with ear, shoulder, hip, ankle. And then to the left side. And then feel for the possibility of a central axis running through these two hemispheres and the front and back halves of your body. You may imagine light. It may be useful for you to imagine some kind of root system or structure, physical structure, but through the center of your brain, down your throat, through your heart, your belly, your pelvis. You may connect again to this down and in inhale, sensing the gravitational pull of the earth, as if to say, I want you here. You're supposed to be here. And then this experience or possibility of the experience of an upward spaciousness, the capacity to release into the unknown as a benevolent space. And notice how your own physical, mental, and emotional structures respond to this possibility of being securely held and completely free. Allow the reality of the solid ground under your feet to support you as any thoughts, emotions maybe bubble to the surface. And if you need to establish a little more present moment, you could gently sway your weight right to left or open your eyes and see what is actually right in front of you and in your space. Take a moment for yourself to come back into your surroundings, your physical surroundings. If you want to stay standing, you can. If you need to kind of move around, walk through your space, you can. When you're ready, come back to a seat if that works for you. Now, I really do believe, and this is also backed up by this beautiful system of healing called Ayurveda, that how we do anything is as important as what we're doing. So like, great, you get up at 5:30 every morning and scrape your tongue and drink lemon water and chant for an hour and practice 80 minutes of asana, but you fucking hate yourself. Or you're doing it because you need to be perfect. You need to be able to say that you did, or there's a belief that this will somehow make things not hurt. And I do believe that there is room for a little bit of like, don't have so many feelings about it and just do it. Do the thing that's good for your body. Go outside and go for a walk. You don't have to want to do it. And I really firmly believe that at some point, if it's going to be beneficial, we have to sense and experience primarily this like, oh, I'm so glad I did this. If you're hating it the whole time, it's not helping. And this is the guiding light for me from this system of thought, Tantra, Ayurveda, indigenous teachings. There is nothing inherently good or bad in existence. Now, in our present age of like crazy town people and degradation of the earth and destruction, there's this interesting, wrench to throw in that train of thought of like, does everyone really have the intention of doing harm? Or is that more a symptom of our unconsciousness and our internalized belief that things are inherently not safe? Right? How much of what is happening is because of true evil? And how much of what we're identifying as evil is just desperation? Which I understand as a human being, so I can have a little empathy for that. And these are not ways to excuse anyone's behavior, but in the face of such behavior, can we take it upon ourselves to be a bit more conscious, a bit more loving, a bit more tuned in to our heart's desire, which, even if there is, again, I'm weaving a little bit here. I want to acknowledge that in this day and age of like, you can make $1 billion and be spiritual. There's always room for us to be unconscious and a little bit selfish and acting from a place of our trauma. Always. So these protocols, I really believe they're tools to help us do our best and gradually chip away at the behavior that is maybe a bit greedy or worn out or harmful to us or others in some way. I believe that we're all just doing our best. So under that umbrella, we'll go into some of these other kind of realities or teachings. Everything in nature is an expression of one of the 5 elements. So they're earth, water, fire, air, and ether. They're kind of basic elements that we interact with all the time daily. So you already know what those major qualities are. But to get a little specific here, because I think it's helpful, we're always participating in an alchemical process, whether that is with our food, our words, our thoughts, our treatment of other people, our sex. As I said, we're always creating because everything is an alchemical process. There is what we came into this body carrying, which most of us don't fully know because we're so sideways based on trying to fit in, based on trying to survive. And as we start to just be a little more present in this alchemical process, like alchemy, we create gold or pure clarity, truth, awareness of what we actually need to create a positive ripple with our life and with our actions. So the words in Ayurveda are prakriti versus vikruti. We come in with these initial impressions and challenges and gifts, but pretty much right away, either through the method by which we were birthed or treated immediately after birth, or in those early ages of our life, how we interpreted our experience. Now we're sort of just trying not to go totally off the rails with our lifestyle practices. So let's get into these qualities, and I won't go into all of them. They're called gunas in Sanskrit, and there's 20 pairs of opposites, or 10 pairs of opposites and 20 qualities. But some of the most interesting, and I think easily accessible, I'm going to put them in the chat for those of you that are here. Hot, cold, stable and mobile. Oops. Smooth and rough, light and heavy. Now, those are not all of them, but those are some that I think are the easiest to kind of get and that we really interact with. Now, in Ayurveda, these are primarily used to describe or even deal with food choices. Food is our first form of medicine. And the teaching is opposites cure each other. Like increases like. So if you're feeling heavy, heavy food is not going to help you. Or maybe it helps you stay in this cycle of, I'm a piece of shit. I'm not worth getting up and going outside and getting sunshine. Right? So we tend to reach for reinforcement of our belief system. I invite you to look at these pairs of opposites and consider your attitudes and behaviors as well through this lens. Our perception of how the world around us is meeting us or supporting us. Is your attitude toward the world around you hot or cold? Hot could be passionate. It could also be angry. Cold could be cool and calm. It could also be frigid, resistant, aloof. Stable or mobile? Stable can be inert, but it can also be consistent. Mobile can be adaptable, but it can also be hyperactive, busybody, right? So I'm not going to spell this out for you because I'm more interested in the bells that are ringing in your body right now already of where you could use a little medicine. Remember, opposites cure each other. How you do anything is as important as what you're eating. So, if we're going to be the perfect little Ayurvedic yogini, I'm not going to eat salad because it's wintertime. But maybe that's like what you have, or, it's after the holidays and you're feeling heavy, or this just sounds good to you. So can you create a warmth through the atmosphere and some stability through sitting down without your phone and no distractions and eating your food? Right? Rather than getting so obsessed about, is this Ayurvedic? Is this perfect? Is this the right portion? Oh my God, I ate cheese. I am totally lifting that from one of Margaret's posts. Like, I'm bad. I'm bad for eating this. That is dissociation. I remember that beautiful quote. The intensity of our compulsive thoughts is in direct proportion to our unwillingness to be in our body in this moment. And frankly, most of us are dissociating and perpetuating that dissociation through a false association of an ideal, through our food choices, through our yoga choices, through our partner choices, we're dissociating through that external fixation, because to actually feel what's going on in our body, this deep longing for something different, is too much. At some point along the way, there was an interruption to that longing fulfilling itself. You can't have any more. You've had too much already. Why are you still asking for that? I can't believe you like that. Shame and ridicule and teasing and being kind of outcast from family or friends for wanting what we want, liking what we like, needing what we need. To me, there's no perfect protocol for feeling established in our food, our sleep, our sex experience, other than to turn toward that part of ourself that just wants to be held so deeply and unconditionally and didn't get that at some point along the way. There's an infinite supply of medicine for us in spending a couple of minutes connecting to the physical experience, the reality of gravity. So you can call up Margaret and do a restorative yoga class with her. Or you can ask a partner or a friend to make a meal for you so you can just sit in a chair and breathe quietly in anticipation of your food without worrying, am I allowed to eat this? So that you can experience comfort and even pleasure being in close proximity with a lover or a potential lover and asking for what you actually want from them. It really all comes back to this first impression of whether or not it was safe to be in a body at all. And as I said, our food, our sleep, our sex, they are tools for our evolution and our clarity. So yes, it is important that you eat and that you eat a pretty high quality of food more often than not. And it is important that you sleep. And going to bed by 10 is a good idea. And it is important that there is integrity in your sexual practices. And that doesn't mean anything specific other than you are in integrity with yourself and have a consenting partner. I'm amazed to have dedicated so much of my life to studying these protocols and food lists and memorizing all sorts of shit, only to realize that there's no right or wrong to any of it, except the alchemy with my being today. So notice where your own body is resisting that, where you may feel heart and throat or tingly or cold. Notice where there is the experience of resonance with some of that. And let's just take a few moments together, whether to move, or sigh, or breathe, or scream, or just let the tears roll down your cheeks. Maybe to snuggle into your seat a little bit more. My shoulders were way up by my ears. Dr. Claudia Welch, who is one of the most wonderful teachers of Ayurveda that I've ever come across for me. Dr. Claudia Welch wrote on my Facebook wall, I know this sounds silly to start. She wrote on my Facebook wall after Hurricane Harvey, acknowledging what had happened and sending love and support. I had taken one course with her, right? Like I never spoke to her directly. Surely she's got like millions of people following her and interested in her work. But she's so stable in her being so clearly connected to what matters, and offered her attention in that moment. And it was really healing. It was really supportive. And I bring her up. She says, these patterns that are set in motion are like wet cement. And at a certain point in our life, they get hard and rigid and are pretty much set. Our approach to food, our approach to exercise, there's always room for change, but the only thing that will change without, approaching yourself with like a jackhammer and just like tearing yourself to bits, really destroying yourself in an attempt to be quote unquote better. So the only thing that softens concrete is oxytocin. So here we are back at the beginning. An experience of yourself as having been created by, with, for love. You are at a point in your evolution where you do have to give that to yourself and grieve the ways that that wasn't given to you in ways that you would have liked. But this evolution of humanity rests on our capacity to stay stable in our awareness of the most important aspect of our being, which is love, an awareness of our interconnectedness. We don't have to fix anybody else. We don't have to carry anybody else on our backs. We have to be completely, fully, and lovingly in our bodies and carry our life force forward as clearly as possible so that when we die, which is an inevitability, our soul returns to that vast pool of consciousness a little bit clearer, a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more refined in its purpose. I could talk about this all day, and the last thing I want to share is that this is the work that I do one-on-one with people and in groups, and I do have a group program starting in April. And so I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't want to end this with a pitch. I meant to say it at the beginning, but I got on with my momentum and just rolled over it. So please reach out to me if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you'd like to go deeper and spend some focused time working with your own ancestral inheritance and ways to live more from your heart's purpose. I'm so honored by your presence and your interest in this conversation. So glad to see some of your faces. I have a lot of love and respect for the process that is coming home to ourself. And with that, I just bow my head and my heart to yours. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Bye.
You're so welcome.